We've decided to go in a different direction with the promotion. That's what Director Mark said, his eyes never quite meeting mine across the polished glass conference table. Not, "Thank you for your dedication," or "We appreciate those weekends you sacrificed." Just those 11 hollow words that made the fluorescent lights suddenly feel too bright against my pounding temples. I felt the weight of every eye in that boardroom, some sympathetic, others gleeful, most just uncomfortable. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My portfolio folder sat open between us, countless late nights and brilliant campaign ideas spread out like evidence at a crime scene. Evidence that apparently meant nothing. I gripped the edge of my ergonomic chair, knuckles whitening, as Director Mark continued speaking. His words blurred into white noise as I watched him gesture toward Ryan, the CEO's son-in-law who'd joined the company barely 9 months ago. Ryan, with his Ivy League connections and country club smile, who was now being handed the creative director position I'd spent 6 years earning. The position that should have been mine. I still remember how Ryan leaned back in his chair, casually adjusting his designer tie, eyes full of that entitled confidence that comes from knowing you've won without having to fight. "Sarah has done exceptional work," Mark was saying, though his tone suggested I was being discussed in past tense. But Ryan brings fresh perspectives that align with our future vision. Fresh perspectives. That's what they were calling nepotism these days. I felt my throat constrict as I struggled to maintain my composure. 6 years at Horizon Marketing. 6 years of bringing in the most lucrative accounts. 6 years of working. A second job as a freelance designer just to support the creative risks my team needed to take that the company wouldn't fund. 6 years of being the first one in and the last to leave. And now I was being passed over for a man who still needed help formatting basic presentation decks. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until Jessica, my assistant creative director, gently nudged my foot under the table. The small gesture brought me back to reality, reminding me that I wasn't alone in that sterile boardroom full of executives who'd never once sat in the creative trenches with us. I exhaled slowly, straightening my spine against the cushioned backrest of the chair that suddenly felt like it was designed to swallow me whole. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd helped redesign this entire room 3 years ago when we rebranded the company. I'd chosen these chairs, this table, even the abstract artwork hanging on the wall behind Director Mark's perfectly groomed head. I'd created the space where my career was now being dismantled. "Do you have any questions, Sarah?" Mark asked, his words puncturing my thoughts. The boardroom fell into uncomfortable silence. Did I have questions? I had 1,000. Why wasn't my consistent performance enough? Why did 6 years of loyalty matter less than a family connection? Why was I expected to train the man who was taking my rightful position? But the words that came out were controlled, measured, professional. The exact opposite of the storm raging inside me. "I understand," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Congratulations, Ryan." The words tasted like copper on my tongue. Ryan nodded with rehearsed humility. "I'm looking forward to working with you, Sarah. Your experience will be invaluable during this transition." The transition, the handover, the period where I would be expected to teach him everything I knew before being quietly shuffled into obsolescence. I could feel Jessica's eyes on me, silently pleading with me not to burn bridges, not to say what we were both thinking. She knew me too well, knew the words bubbling just beneath my professional veneer. The meeting concluded with awkward handshakes and empty platitudes. "You're still an essential part of the team," Director Mark assured me, his hand on my shoulder, feeling like an anchor dragging me down rather than support lifting me up. "We value your contributions." Past tense again. Always past tense. I nodded and smiled, playing my part in this corporate theater while my mind was already calculating how many months of mortgage payments I had in savings. how long I could sustain without the promotion's salary increase I'd been counting on, whether my freelance clients could become full-time if needed, whether I'd even want to stay at Horizon after this betrayal. Jessica waited until the executives had filtered out of the room before approaching me. The click of the door closing behind the last of them felt like permission to finally exhale. "This is complete bullshit," she whispered fiercely, her normally calm demeanor cracking. "Everyone knows it should have been you. Ryan doesn't know the difference between kerning and leading." I laughed, but it came out hollow. Apparently, understanding typography isn't as important as understanding which golf course the CEO prefers. I began gathering my portfolio materials, sliding the campaign mock-ups and strategy documents back into their folder with mechanical precision. Each page represented nights I'd missed dinner with friends, weekends sacrificed to deadlines, early mornings before the sun had even considered rising. 6 years, Jess. 6 years of killing myself for this company. Jessica leaned against the conference table, arms crossed tightly across her chest. "What are you going to do?" Her question hung in the air between us, heavy with implications. What could I do? HR wouldn't intervene, not when the decision came from the executive floor. The CEO, Thomas Blackwell, had made it clear with this move exactly where his priorities lay, and it wasn't with merit or dedication. "What can I do?" I responded, closing my portfolio with a definitive snap. "I'll smile. I'll train Ryan. I'll be the team player they expect me to be." I stood, smoothing the wrinkles from my charcoal pencil skirt, a purchase I'd made specifically for the promotion I thought was coming. "And I'll start updating my resume tonight." Jessica's expression softened with concern. "You can't leave, Sarah. The team needs you. I need you. Without you, the creative department will fall apart in months." "Then maybe it should fall apart," I replied, surprised by the edge in my voice. "Maybe they need to see what happens when you choose nepotism over talent." We walked together through the maze of cubicles and glass-walled offices that made up Horizon Marketing's 14th floor headquarters. The downtown Chicago skyline stretched out beyond the windows, a view I'd once found inspiring, but now seemed to mock me with possibilities just out of reach. Coworkers glanced up as we passed, their expressions ranging from curiosity to pity. News traveled fast in agencies. I had no doubt the entire building already knew about Ryan's promotion. My office, my small territory in this corporate kingdom, felt like a sanctuary when I finally closed the door behind me. The space reflected my orderly mind, color-coded project files neatly arranged, design books methodically organized, awards discreetly displayed on a single shelf, awards that hadn't been enough to secure my advancement. I sank into my chair and stared at the framed photograph on my desk, me with my creative team at last year's advertising awards, all of us grinning with the golden statue for Best Integrated Campaign. We'd beaten agencies triple our size that night. Director Mark had called it a game changer for Horizon. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Apparently, the game had changed again without anyone telling me the new rules. The soft ping of my computer drew my attention to an email notification. Transition meeting, creative director role, from Mark's assistant. Tomorrow morning. Not even a day to process before I'd be expected to begin training my replacement. I closed my eyes, feeling the beginning of a stress headache forming at my temples. The familiar pressure had become my constant companion over the years at Horizon, along with the emergency stash of painkillers I kept in my desk drawer. My phone buzzed with a text from my roommate Olivia. "How'd it go? Champagne chilling in the fridge for the new creative director?" The message was like a knife twist. I'd been so certain of the promotion that I'd shared my expectations with the people closest to me. Now I'd have to face not just my own disappointment, but theirs too. "No celebration tonight," I typed back. "They gave it to the CEO's son-in-law." Seeing the words in the stark black and white of my phone screen made it suddenly, painfully real. I set the phone down without waiting for Olivia's response. I couldn't handle sympathy right now, not when I was still fighting to maintain my professional composure. A soft knock at my office door made me quickly straighten in my chair, fixing my expression into something approaching neutral. "Come in," I called, expecting Jessica or perhaps another sympathetic team member. Instead, Ryan's tall frame filled the doorway, his expression caught between smugness and fabricated concern. The Harvard MBA who'd married the CEO's daughter last spring and miraculously found himself on Horizon's fast-track program by summer. "Hey, Sarah, do you have a minute?" He didn't wait for my response before stepping into my office and closing the door behind him. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, forcing my face into a mask of professionalism. "Congratulations on the promotion," I said, the words automatic and empty. Ryan sat down, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees in what I recognized as a practiced pose of sincerity. "I wanted to talk to you privately. I know this must be disappointing." He paused, studying my face like he was searching for the right corporate platitude to offer. "I want you to know that I value everything you've built here. I'm hoping we can work together to make this transition smooth." The audacity of his presence in my office, hours after taking the position I'd earned, made my skin prickle with anger. Did he expect gratitude? Understanding? My fingers curled around the arms of my chair, but my voice remained steady when I spoke. "Of course, the team's success is my priority." A lie, but a necessary one for now. Ryan smiled, apparently relieved that I wasn't making a scene. "Great, that's really great to hear. I was thinking we could do lunch this week, get aligned on the department's direction." His confidence grated against my raw nerves. He was already planning changes to my department, the creative team I'd built meticulously over years. "I'll check my calendar," I replied, a non-answer that seemed to satisfy him. As he stood to leave, Ryan paused at the door. "You know, I've always admired your campaigns. The Starlight Hotel's rebrand last year was brilliant." He said it like he was bestowing a gift, a consolation prize for my loss. "Thank you," I said, the words feeling mechanical. The team worked incredibly hard on that project. 60-hour weeks, midnight strategy sessions. My second job's income poured into experimental mock-ups that the company had refused to fund, but that ultimately won us the account. Details Ryan would never know or appreciate. After he left, I turned my chair toward the window, watching the afternoon sun glint off neighboring skyscrapers. Chicago had been my home for nearly a decade now, ever since I'd graduated from Northwestern with dreams of revolutionizing the advertising world. I'd chosen Horizon because of their creative reputation, their promise of meritocracy, their talk of valuing innovation above all else. For years, I'd believed it. I'd defended the late nights and the modest pay by telling myself it would all be worth it when I reached the creative director position. Now that dream had evaporated like morning fog, leaving behind the cold reality of corporate politics. I pulled out my phone again, seeing 3 sympathetic messages from Olivia that I still couldn't bring myself to answer. Instead, I opened my calendar and counted the sick days and vacation time I'd accumulated over years of rarely taking time off. 23 days, more than enough to job hunt while maintaining the appearance of cooperation during this transition. My desk phone rang, jolting me from my calculations. The reception desk downstairs. "Sarah, your 3 o'clock is here. The Meridian Coffee representative?" I closed my eyes briefly. The pitch meeting. In the chaos of the promotion announcement, I'd completely forgotten about the potential new client waiting downstairs, a regional coffee chain looking to rebrand. "Send them up to the main conference room," I instructed. "I'll be right there." I stood, gathering my materials for a meeting I now had no motivation to lead. A meeting for accounts that would soon fall under Ryan's oversight. As I walked toward The conference room, I passed the large motivational banner Horizon had installed last year during the company rebranding. "Where talent rises," it proclaimed in stylized typography that I had designed myself. I'd believed those words once. Now, they mocked me with each step. Jessica was already in the conference room, setting up the presentation materials. She raised an eyebrow in silent question as I entered. "I'm fine," I said before she could ask, arranging my face into the confident, creative professional my clients expected. "Let's just get through this." But as I prepared to sell another client on Horizon's creative excellence, a plan was already forming in my mind. If talent wouldn't rise here, perhaps it was time to see if it could rise somewhere else, somewhere that valued dedication over dinner party connections. 6 years I'd given to Horizon marketing, 6 years of sacrifices and second jobs and creative solutions that had built the company's reputation. They thought Ryan could simply step into my role and continue that success? I straightened my shoulders as the Meridian Coffee executives entered the room. I would smile through this meeting. I would play my part in the transition. I would train Ryan as expected. But corporate America had taught me one valuable lesson today. Loyalty only flows one way. And maybe it was time I applied that lesson to my own career. The Meridian Coffee team filed in with handshakes and pleasantries, unaware of the morning's corporate drama, unaware that the creative director they thought they were meeting with was now just another disposable team member. "Good afternoon," I greeted them, my professional smile firmly in place. "We're excited to show you how Horizon can transform your brand." The words flowed automatically while my mind continued plotting my next moves in a game where the rules had suddenly changed. My laptop screen illuminated my face as I opened the presentation, the glow masking whatever emotions might have been, visible otherwise. As I clicked to the first slide, I made my decision. This wouldn't be just another pitch meeting. This would be my audition, not for Meridian Coffee as a Horizon client, but for my own future. I would show them my best work, my most innovative thinking. And when the time came, they would remember my name, not Horizon's. "Let's talk about how to make Meridian Coffee impossible to ignore," I began, feeling a new fire ignite within me. A determination that had nothing to do with Horizon marketing and everything to do with proving exactly what Sarah Mitchell was capable of. Behind me, the Chicago skyline stretched vast and full of possibilities through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Skyscrapers filled with companies that might value what Horizon clearly didn't. As I launched into my presentation, I felt something unexpected rising beneath my disappointment. Freedom. For the first time in 6 years, I wasn't constrained by my loyalties to Horizon. For the first time, I could imagine a different future. The Meridian executives leaned forward, engaged by my passion that now burned more authentically than ever before. "Coffee isn't just a product," I told them, my voice growing stronger with each word. "It's the first decision millions of people make every day. It's a promise of possibility. Like the possibility now stretching before me, uncertain and frightening, but mine to shape." Jessica caught my eye from across the table, a question in her gaze. She knew me well enough to sense the shift in my energy, the new determination in my voice. I gave her the smallest nod before turning back to the clients. She didn't know it yet, but soon I would offer her a choice too. Because if I had learned anything from today's betrayal, it was that true loyalty existed between people, not between people and corporations. As I clicked to the next slide of my presentation, my mind was already racing ahead to tonight, when I would open my laptop at home and begin drafting not just my resignation letter, but the business plan I'd been putting off for years. The meeting room felt suddenly too small to contain the possibilities unfurling before me. Possibilities born from the very betrayal meant to diminish me. Director Mark had done me an unwitting favor today. He had freed me from the golden handcuffs I'd fastened upon myself. As I guided the Meridian executives through our proposal, I silently thanked Ryan for showing me exactly what loyalty was worth at Horizon Marketing. The price had been steep, but the lesson was priceless. The afternoon light slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across the conference table as I wrapped up the presentation. The Meridian team was visibly impressed, exchanging those looks clients get when they know they've found the right creative partner. Little did they know that partner might soon have a different name than Horizon Marketing. "Any questions?" I asked, standing confidently beside the final slide. As hands raised around the table, I felt more certain with each passing moment. This wasn't an ending. This was the first page of a new chapter, one where I would finally write my own rules. The rules of talent rising on its own terms. The drive home that evening felt surreal. Traffic crawled along Lakeshore Drive as usual, but everything seemed distant, like I was watching myself navigate through the sea of headlights and brake lights from somewhere outside my body. I hadn't cried yet. That surprised me. Instead, a strange numbness had settled over me, punctuated by waves of anger that made my hands grip the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My apartment building came into view, a converted factory in West Loop that I'd stretched my budget to afford 3 years ago when I'd finally received that substantial raise. The raise that had come with a promise of a clear path to creative director. "Just keep doing what you're doing, Sarah," Director Mark had said back then, his hand on my shoulder in that same patronizing way. "The position is yours to lose." Well, apparently I had lost it without ever realizing the race had changed. I sat in my parked car for several minutes, staring at nothing, replaying the morning's meeting in my mind. The signs had been there, I realize now. Ryan being invited to client meetings he had no reason to attend. The CEO stopping by our floor. More frequently, always finding his way to my department, always asking pointed questions about our processes, our client retention, our creative direction. They'd been evaluating me, measuring me, finding me somehow lacking despite all evidence to the contrary. The buzzing of my phone pulled me from my thoughts. My mother's name flashed on the screen. I had texted her earlier with the news, knowing she'd been waiting to hear about the promotion almost as anxiously as I had been. "Mom," I answered, my voice revealing more exhaustion than I intended. "Oh, sweetheart." Just those 2 words from her, filled with maternal concern, nearly broke the emotional dam I'd been maintaining all day. "I'm so sorry. That's just not right." I leaned my head back against the headrest, closing my eyes. 6 years, Mom. 6 years of never saying no, of taking on impossible deadlines, of solving problems no one else could solve. My voice cracked slightly. "Do you know I've been working freelance jobs at night just to fund the team's experimental projects when Horizon wouldn't approve the budget? Projects that ended up winning us our biggest accounts?" The silence on the other end told me she hadn't known. I hadn't told many people about my side gigs, the logo designs for startups, the website overhauls for small businesses, the brand strategy consulting for companies that couldn't afford Horizon's rates. Work I did from my kitchen table after already putting in 10-hour days at the office. "You never told me you were working 2 jobs, she finally said, that hint of maternal disapproval mixing with concern. "It wasn't supposed to be permanent," I explained, watching a couple walk past my car, hand in hand, laughing about something I couldn't hear. "It was just until I made creative director. The promotion would have meant I didn't need to freelance anymore. The salary increase would have covered everything." The irony tasted bitter. I had worked a second job to prove I deserved a promotion that would have made the second job unnecessary. Now I had neither. "What are you going to do?" My mother asked the question everyone seemed to be asking today, the question I was still formulating answers to. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "I can't quit immediately. I need the paycheck. But I can't stay either, not after this." The thought of walking into that office every day, of training Ryan, of watching him take credit for my team's creativity made my stomach clench with anxiety. "You could come home for a few days," she suggested. "Clear your head." Going back to Indianapolis wasn't the answer. As tempting as it was to retreat to my childhood bedroom, to let my mother comfort me with homemade lasagna and reassurances that things would work out, I knew I couldn't run away from this. "Thanks, Mom, but I need to figure this out here. I'll call you tomorrow, okay?" After promising I would eat something and not just open a bottle of wine for dinner, a promise I wasn't entirely sure I would keep, I ended the call and finally made my way up to my apartment. The space that had once felt like a symbol of my success, exposed brick walls, high ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, now seemed to mock me with its monthly price tag. Olivia was waiting when I walked through the door, a glass of wine already poured for me on the kitchen counter. Her expression was a perfect mixture of sympathy and indignation. "Those absolute assholes," she said by way of greeting. Olivia had never been one to mince words. It was one of the reasons we'd remained roommates long after we could afford to live separately. As a surgical resident, she understood ambition and disappointment in ways many others didn't. I accepted the wine gratefully, taking a long sip before setting my bag down on the counter. "The CEO's son-in-law," I said, still unable to believe it even as I spoke the words. 9 months at the company, and he's now my boss." Olivia leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Please tell me you're quitting. It's not that simple." I kicked off my heels, feeling the relief of pressure being released from my feet, wishing the knot in my chest could be so easily undone. "I have rent to pay. I have that trip to Barcelona in 3 months that's already booked and paid for. I can't just walk out." "But you're looking for other jobs, right? Starting tomorrow." Olivia knew me well enough to recognize when I needed a push. I nodded, taking another sip of wine. "Tonight, actually, after I eat something." Olivia's expression softened. "There's Thai food in the fridge. I ordered your usual." She hesitated, then added, "Want to talk about it? Or would you rather watch something mindless and pretend today never happened?" The question made me realize how desperately I needed to process what had occurred. Not just today's humiliation, but the years leading up to it. The patterns I'd ignored, the warning signs I'd dismissed. "I think I need to talk about it," I admitted. "But first, food and perhaps a second glass of wine." Over pad thai and spring rolls, sitting cross-legged on our living room floor with containers spread across the coffee table, I recounted the day's events in excruciating detail. Olivia listened without interrupting, her expressions shifting between outrage, disbelief, and fierce loyalty. Only when I finished did she speak. "You know what this reminds me of?" she asked, reaching for her wine glass. "That surgery rotation I had with Dr. Campbell last year. Remember?" I nodded. Olivia had spent 6 months working 80-hour weeks under a surgeon renowned for his brilliance and his impossible standards. She'd sacrificed sleep, relationships, basic human needs just to prove herself worthy of his mentorship. I killed myself trying to impress him, she continued. Stayed later than anyone, prepared more thoroughly, even published that research paper in my non-existent free time. And when it came time to select a resident for that cardiac fellowship, he chose Dr. Fratboy, the guy whose daddy donates millions to the hospital. The parallel wasn't lost on me. "What did you do?" A slow smile spread across Olivia's face. "I found a better fellowship, one where my work actually mattered more than my connections. And guess what? Now I'm outperforming Dr. Fratboy, and Campbell knows it." Her words settled around me, offering a perspective I hadn't considered in my shock and disappointment. Perhaps this rejection wasn't an ending, but an opportunity, a forced redirection toward something better. "You think I should find another agency?" Olivia shrugged, twirling noodles around her fork. I think you should consider all your options, including the one you've been talking about since we were in college. My own agency. The dream I'd pushed to the background year after year, always telling myself, not yet, or after I get more experience, or when I have more savings. The idea both terrified and exhilarated me. That's a massive leap, Liv, especially now. Is it, though? She set down her fork, her expression serious. You already have freelance clients. You've been running Horizon's creative department in all but title for years. You have connections, a portfolio most creative directors would kill for, and a reputation in the industry. She leaned forward. And now you have something else, too. What's that? A fire lit under your ass, she said bluntly. Sometimes we need to get pushed off the edge before we finally learn to fly. I laughed, despite myself. That's either profound wisdom or a Pinterest quote. Can it be both? Olivia grinned. Look, I'm not saying quit tomorrow with no plan. I'm saying maybe this is the universe kicking you out of the nest you've outgrown. The thought stayed with me long after we finished dinner, after Olivia left for her night shift at the hospital, after I'd opened my laptop and updated my resume as promised. I found myself creating two versions, one for potential employers and another for potential clients of my own. Just to explore the options, I told myself. Just to be thorough. Sleep eluded me that night, my mind racing with possibilities, fears, alternate futures branching out before me like roads on a map. By morning, eyes gritty from lack of sleep but mind clearer than it had been in months, I'd made at least one decision. I wouldn't give Horizon the satisfaction of seeing me break. I would be professional, strategic, and above all, patient. This was a long game now, and I intended to win. I arrived at the office an hour earlier than usual, before most of the creative team, before Ryan would arrive with his confident swagger and Harvard Business School theories about creativity. My office felt different this morning, temporary, like a hotel room rather than a space I'd personalized over years. I looked at each item with new eyes. The industry awards that suddenly seemed like participation trophies, the framed campaign posters that represented countless unpaid overtime hours, the photo of my team celebrating our biggest win last year. That photo gave me pause, faces beaming with pride and exhaustion after a 3-day creative marathon to save the Westfield account. Jessica was there, arms thrown around Miguel and Zoe, Travis in the back, his signature beanie pulled low. Dana, with her thumbs up, my team. The people who had trusted me, followed my creative vision, worked impossible hours because they believed in what we were building together. What would happen to them under Ryan's leadership? The question lodged in my chest like a physical pain. I knew exactly what would happen. Ryan would implement whatever trendy management philosophy he'd learned in business school, would fail to understand the creative process, would destroy the delicate ecosystem of trust and creative freedom I nurtured. My team would suffer, their work would suffer, and eventually, they would leave, unless I took them with me. The thought appeared fully formed, startling in its clarity and audacity. Not right away, not all at once, but eventually. When I started my own agency, I could bring them along. The talent that Horizon had taken for granted could become the foundation of something new, something better. A soft knock at my open door interrupted my thoughts. Jessica stood there, 2 coffee cups in hand, her expression a mixture of concern and determination. "You look like you've been here a while," she observed, placing one of the cups on my desk. "I figured you might need this today." I accepted the coffee gratefully. "Thanks. I didn't sleep much." Jessica closed the door behind her before taking the seat across from my desk. "So what's the plan?" "The plan?" "Sarah." She fixed me with a look that said she wasn't buying any pretense. "I've worked with you for 4 years. I know you always have a plan. And after yesterday, I know you're not just going to roll over. and accept this." I studied her face, the determined set of her jaw, the unwavering loyalty in her eyes. Jessica was more than my assistant creative director. She was the person I trusted most in this company, the one who understood my creative vision and could execute it almost as well as I could. If I were to start something new, she would be the first person I'd want beside me. But it was too soon to voice those thoughts, too soon to make promises I wasn't certain I could keep. Instead, I opted for a partial truth. I'm going to do exactly what's expected of me. I'm going to train Ryan, support the transition, and be the consummate professional. Jessica's eyebrows rose in obvious disbelief. And I'm going to explore my options, update my portfolio, take some meetings, see what's out there. She nodded slowly. "You're leaving then?" "Eventually." I took a sip of the coffee she'd brought, prepared exactly how I liked it, with a splash of oat milk and no sugar. Another reminder of how well she knew me, how seamlessly we worked together. But not immediately, and not without a plan. "When you go," Jessica said, her voice quiet but firm. "I want to go with you." The statement hung in the air between us, significant and slightly dangerous in its implications. Poaching employees was the kind of thing that could get you blacklisted in our industry, could lead to lawsuits if not handled carefully. But the loyalty inherent in her offer made something warm unfurl in my chest, cutting through the cold disappointment that had taken residence there. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," I cautioned, though I couldn't help the small smile that formed. "First, we need to get through this transition period without burning any bridges." "Speak for yourself," Jessica muttered. "I've got matches and gasoline ready to go." I laughed, the first genuine laugh since yesterday's announcement. "Save those for later. We might need them." The office began to fill with the rest of the creative team, their voices and movements creating the familiar morning symphony of computers booting up, coffee being poured, quiet conversations about weekend plans and project deadlines. I watched through my office window as they settled into their routines, unaware that their department was about to undergo a seismic shift. At precisely 9:15, 15 minutes late, I noted with irritation, Ryan strolled into the creative department, stopping to chat with various team members with the forced camaraderie of a politician working a room. His gaze eventually found my office, and with a nod that suggested he was granting me an audience rather than the other way around, he made his way toward me. Jessica stood as he approached, gathering her notepad. "I'll get those campaign notes, ready for the midday meeting," she said, a perfect professional facade sliding into place. Only the slight tightening at the corners of her eyes betrayed her true feelings as she passed Ryan in the doorway. "Good morning, Sarah," Ryan greeted, taking the seat Jessica had vacated without waiting for an invitation. His confidence bordered on arrogance, his posture relaxed and entitled in a way that suggested he belonged in this office more than I did. "Ready for our transition meeting?" The irony of him asking if I was ready, as though I were the one who needed preparation rather than him, wasn't lost on me. I gestured to the neatly organized folders on my desk. "I've prepared an overview of all current projects, client relationships, team strengths, and department processes." Ryan looked momentarily taken aback by my thoroughness, perhaps expecting resistance or emotional residue from yesterday's announcement. His recovery was quick, though. "That's great. Very comprehensive." He picked up the top folder, flipping through it with a casualness that made my teeth clench. 6 years of developed systems and successful strategies, treated like a restaurant menu he was browsing. "I thought it would be helpful for you to understand how we've achieved our 92% client retention rate," I said, unable to keep a slight edge from my voice. "And why our creative department has the highest revenue per employee in the company." Ryan's expression flickered, a brief acknowledgement that he recognized the subtle reminder of what he was inheriting, and what he could potentially destroy through inexperience. "I appreciate that. Though I do have some ideas about how we might modernize some of these approaches. Modernize. The corporate buzzword that usually meant change things I don't understand just to put my stamp on them. I kept my expression neutral. I look forward to hearing them. For the next 2 hours, I walked Ryan through the intricacies of running Horizon's creative department, the delicate client relationships I'd cultivated, the unique creative processes I'd developed, the talent management strategies that had kept our top performers from being poached by larger agencies. I watched his eyes glaze over when I explained our creative workflow system, noted his impatience when I detailed the importance of our weekly critique sessions. He was already planning to dismantle what I'd built. I could see it in the way he made notes, in the questions he asked, in the things he didn't ask about. My phone buzzed with a calendar notification. The transition announcement to the creative team was scheduled for 11:30. A meeting where I would stand beside Ryan as Director Mark informed my team that the person who had championed their work, fought for their raises, and protected their creative freedom was being sidelined for a newcomer with the right last name. "We should head to the conference room," I said, gathering my materials. "The team will be waiting." Ryan nodded, standing, and adjusting his tie, a nervous gesture that gave me a small, petty satisfaction. At least he had the sense to be somewhat anxious about facing a room full of people who knew exactly what was happening. The creative team was already assembled when we arrived, their expressions ranging from confusion to thinly veiled hostility. Jessica had clearly prepared them for what was coming. Director Mark arrived last, sweeping into the room with practiced authority, flanked by Camille from HR, a clear signal that management expected potential fallout. "Thank you all for gathering on short notice," Mark began, his corporate smile firmly in place. "As some of you may have heard, we have an exciting announcement regarding the creative department's leadership." I watched my team's faces as Mark delivered the news, couched in corporate euphemisms about fresh directions and new perspectives. Miguel, our senior art director, didn't bother to hide his scowl. Zoe, normally animated and expressive, had gone completely still, her eyes fixed on a point somewhere beyond Mark's head. Travis removed his beanie and ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized as his response to stress. "Sarah has done exceptional work building this department," Mark continued, placing a hand on my shoulder that I wanted to shrug off, but didn't. "And she'll be instrumental in ensuring a smooth transition as Ryan steps into the creative director role." The silence that followed was deafening. No congratulations for Ryan, no questions, just 20 pairs of eyes shifting between me, Ryan, and Mark, with varying degrees of disbelief and resentment. Mark cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the response. "Sarah, perhaps you'd like to say a few words?" All eyes turned to me. This was the moment. The perfect opportunity to expose the politics at play, to voice the injustice, to burn the bridge so thoroughly that nothing would remain but ash. The words formed in my mind, sharp and cutting and completely career-ending. But then I looked at my team, the people who depended on me, who had followed my creative leadership, who might someday follow me again under different circumstances. People who still needed their jobs at Horizon, at least for now. People who would suffer if I turned this moment into the conflagration it deserved to be. So instead, I smiled. Not the genuine smile they were used to seeing from me, but a professional facsimile that didn't reach my eyes. "Change is always challenging," I began, choosing each word carefully, "but also brings opportunity. Ryan brings a fresh perspective that I'm sure will build upon the strong foundation we've all created together." I could see the confusion in their faces, perhaps even disappointment from those who had expected or hoped for dramatics. But beneath that, I saw understanding dawning in Jessica's eyes, in Miguel's slight nod, in the way Zoe's posture relaxed just slightly. They knew me well enough to recognize that my calm acceptance wasn't surrender. It was strategy. I look forward to helping ensure that the creativity and excellence this team is known for continues seamlessly through this transition, I concluded, the corporate platitudes falling from my lips with practiced ease while my mind worked on a very different transition altogether. Ryan stepped forward then, launching into a speech about his vision for the department, a speech filled with buzzwords and vague promises that revealed how little he actually understood about creative work. I watched my team's reactions, noted who nodded politely and who exchanged skeptical glances. I was already mentally categorizing. Who would thrive under new leadership? Who would struggle? Who would be receptive when the time came for me to extend invitations to join whatever came next? The meeting concluded with awkward applause and forced congratulations. As the team filed out, Jessica lingered behind, waiting until we were alone before speaking. "That was quite a performance," she said quietly. "Which part?" "The part where you endorsed Ryan without a single sincere word." A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Not a single bridge burned, but no actual support offered either. Masterful." I shrugged, gathering my notes. "Like I said, professional." "Professional on the surface," Jessica corrected. "Strategic underneath." I didn't confirm or deny her assessment, but the understanding that passed between us was clear. The game had changed, but we were still playing, just with different rules and a longer time frame. As I walked back to my office, my phone buzzed with an email notification, a response to one of the applications I'd sent out last night, requesting an interview. Another notification followed, a message from one of my freelance clients asking if I'd be interested in taking on more work. Small signs that perhaps there was a world beyond Horizon marketing, beyond the disappointment and betrayal that had defined the last 24 hours. I paused at my office door, looking back at the creative department, at the space I had shaped, the team I had built, the work I had poured myself into for 6 years. For the first time since yesterday's announcement, I felt something besides anger or numbness. I felt possibility. The same creative energy that had driven me to solve impossible problems for clients now turned inward, imagining new paths, new structures, new futures. They had given my position to the CEO's son-in-law, but in doing so, they might have inadvertently given me something far more valuable, the push I needed to create something that was truly mine. 2 weeks into Ryan's leadership, and the creative department was already showing signs of strain. I sat in my now smaller office. Yes, they'd actually moved me to a smaller space to give Ryan my old office with the downtown view, reviewing the latest client feedback for the Meridian Coffee campaign. The comments were scathing. Uninspired. Disconnected from brand values. Lacks the innovation we were promised. Each criticism felt like a personal failure, even though I knew exactly what had happened. Ryan had taken my original concepts and enhanced them with his own ideas, ignoring all my warnings about diluting the creative vision. The irony wasn't lost on me. After fighting for this account, after delivering that pitch that had so impressed the Meridian executives, I was now watching Ryan systematically dismantle everything that had made it successful. But I wasn't allowed to fix it. I wasn't even allowed in client meetings anymore. Another of Ryan's modernizations of our workflow. A knock at my door pulled me from my thoughts. Miguel stood there, expression tight, portfolio clutched under his arm. My stomach sank. I recognized that look, that stance. I'd seen it before when creatives had reached their breaking point. "Do you have a minute?" he asked, his usual exuberance noticeably absent. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Of course." Miguel sat, placing his portfolio on his lap like a shield. "I've accepted a position at Grant & Morris," he said without preamble. "I start in 2 weeks." The news hit me with surprising force. Miguel had been with me almost from the beginning, a brilliant art director whose visual storytelling had helped win us some of our biggest clients. Now he was leaving for one of our competitors, and I couldn't even blame him. "They're lucky to have you," I said, meaning it. "But we'll miss you here." "Will you, though?" The question came out sharper than I think he intended, and he immediately looked apologetic. "I'm sorry, that's not fair to you. It's just, things are changing so quickly, and not for the better." "What did Ryan say when you told him?" I asked, already dreading the answer. Miguel gave a short, humorless laugh. He said I was easily replaceable and that he'd been wanting to bring in fresh talent anyway. Then he asked if I'd sign a non-compete. My hands tightened into fists under my desk. Ryan's arrogance was staggering, his disregard for the team's talent and contributions inexcusable, and the non-compete request was just salt in the wound. "Did you sign it?" "No." A flash of the old Miguel showed through, defiant and proud. I told him my lawyer would need to review it first. He didn't like that. I nodded, feeling a mixture of pride in Miguel's backbone and despair at losing such a valuable team member. "I understand why you're leaving. I really do." Miguel leaned forward, lowering his voice slightly. "You should leave too, Sarah. This place is toxic now. Ryan's systematically dismantling everything you built. The team meetings, the collaborative process, even the open critique sessions. All gone. He's putting together presentation decks without creative input, making promises to clients we can't fulfill, and then blaming the team when things fall apart. None of this was news to me. I'd been documenting every misstep, every poor decision, every breach of protocol for the past 2 weeks. Not that I could use any of it officially, but the record keeping gave me some small sense of control in a situation where I had virtually none. "I have my reasons for staying, at least for now," I said carefully. Miguel studied my face for a moment before understanding dawned. "You're planning something." It wasn't a question, so I didn't answer directly. "Let's just say I'm considering all my options." A slow smile spread across his face, the first real smile I'd seen from him in weeks. "Good, because this team deserves better leadership than what they're getting now." He hesitated, then added, "When you make your move, whatever it is, let me know. I might be at Grant and Morris, but I'd follow you anywhere, Sarah. The whole team would." His loyalty, offered even as he was walking out the door, made my throat tighten with emotion. "I appreciate that more than you know," I managed. "And Miguel? Make them pay you what you're worth. Don't accept their first offer." After Miguel left, I turned to my computer and added his name to a spreadsheet I'd been maintaining, a document titled Freelance Contacts that was actually my running list of potential future employees and collaborators. The list was growing, longer each day. Just yesterday, Zoe had tearfully informed me she was interviewing elsewhere. The day before, Travis had asked for a reference letter, just in case. The exodus had begun, precisely as I'd predicted. My phone pinged with a calendar notification. Mandatory creative department meeting in 15 minutes. I hadn't been informed about any meeting, which meant Ryan had scheduled it without including me. Another power move in his ongoing campaign to minimize my role. Still, I gathered my notebook and made my way to the main conference room, determined to maintain my professional facade no matter what new indignity awaited. The creative team was already assembled when I arrived, their expressions ranging from resigned to openly hostile. Jessica caught my eye from across the room, giving me the smallest shake of her head, a warning that something was wrong. Ryan stood at the head of the table, Director Mark beside him, both men in nearly identical gray suits that seemed to emphasize the corporate hive mind mentality that was slowly consuming Horizon. "Ah, Sarah," Ryan said, his tone suggesting he was surprised to see me. "I wasn't sure if you'd be joining us, since this primarily concerns the new direction for the department." The implication that I wasn't part of the department's future wasn't subtle. I took a seat at the far end of the table, as far from Ryan's presumptuous position at the head as possible. "I wouldn't miss it," I replied, my voice pleasantly neutral despite the anger simmering just beneath the surface. Ryan smiled thinly before addressing the room. "As you all know, we've been implementing some changes to make our creative process more efficient and results-driven. Today, I'm excited to announce the next phase of our department's evolution." I watched my team's faces as Ryan unveiled his grand vision, a complete restructuring of the creative department, eliminating the collaborative teams I'd carefully built and replacing them with a rigid hierarchy where all concepts would flow through him first. The specialized roles I'd created to leverage individual strengths would be standardized into generic job titles. The critique sessions that had sparked some of our most innovative ideas would be replaced by formal review processes requiring multiple approvals, most of them from non-creative managers. It was a disaster in the making, a corporate straitjacket, being forced onto a process that required freedom and fluidity to succeed. I could see the despair spreading across the room as each team member realized what these changes would mean for their daily work, their creative fulfillment, their professional growth. Additionally, Ryan continued, seemingly oblivious to the mood in the room, we'll be implementing new performance metrics for the creative team. Your output will be measured not just on quality but on quantity and speed, with bonuses tied to meeting specific numerical targets. Jessica's pen snapped in her hand, drawing everyone's attention. She smiled tightly, slipping the broken pieces into her pocket. "Sorry," she murmured, though the look she shot Ryan made it clear the only thing she was sorry about was not breaking something more substantial. "Questions?" Ryan asked, in a tone that suggested he didn't actually want any. Silence hung heavy in the room. This wasn't a discussion or even an announcement. It was a decree from someone who had never once created an original design, written a compelling headline, or understood the delicate alchemy that transformed a client's business problem into a creative solution. And everyone knew it. I should have stayed quiet. The strategic move would have been to nod along, document the disaster, and use it later when the inevitable client complaints started rolling in. But something in me rebelled against watching my team's spirits being crushed in real time. "I have a question," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the conference room. "Have these changes been discussed with any of our major clients? Particularly those who specifically hired Horizon because of our collaborative approach and specialized creative teams?" Ryan's smile faltered slightly. "We'll be communicating the improvements to clients after implementation." "So, that's a no," I clarified. "You haven't consulted with Westfield, whose contract specifically mentions our team structure as a key factor in their decision to work with us? Or Meridian Coffee, who just last month praised our specialized approach in their feedback?" Director Mark cleared his throat, stepping forward slightly. "Sarah, these are internal operational decisions. Clients hire us for results, not processes." "With all due respect," I countered, "they hire us for both. Our processes are what produce the results they value. Changing those processes fundamentally alters what we're selling." Ryan's expression hardened. "The decision has been made, Sarah. This isn't a debate." I nodded slowly, appearing to acquiesce while making careful mental notes. "I understand. When do these changes take effect?" "Immediately," Ryan replied, a hint of triumph in his voice. "New team assignments will be in your inboxes by end of day." The meeting concluded with Ryan distributing printed copies of the new organizational chart, a corporate pyramid that looked like it belonged in a business school textbook rather than a creative agency. I accepted my copy without comment, folded it neatly, and slipped it into my notebook. Evidence. More proof of the systematic dismantling of everything I'd built. As the team filed out, their postures slumped in defeat. Jessica lingered behind. Once we were alone, she turned to me, not bothering to hide her fury. "This is going to be a catastrophe. The Meridian campaign is already struggling, and now this? We'll lose every major client within 6 months. Probably sooner, I agreed, keeping my voice low. Westfield will be the first to go once they see the new work produced under this structure. Jessica ran a hand through her short hair, a gesture of frustration I'd seen countless times during difficult projects. So we just watch it burn? Is that the plan? Because I don't know how much more of this I can take, Sarah. I glanced around to ensure we were truly alone before responding. Not much longer, I promised. I have a meeting tomorrow that might change everything. What kind of meeting? The kind I can't talk about here. I gave her a meaningful look. But if it goes well, I'll need you to be ready to move quickly. Understanding dawned in her eyes. How quickly? Very, I replied. And in the meantime, document everything. Every client complaint, every missed deadline, every flawed execution that results from these new improvements. Jessica nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. Already on it. My complaint folder is getting pretty thick. Good. We may need it. After Jessica left, I remained in the conference room, staring at the printout of Ryan's organizational chart. In just 2 short weeks, he had managed to undo years of careful culture building and team development. The creative department that had once been Horizon's crown jewel, the reason clients chose us over larger, more established agencies, was being transformed into a soulless production line. And for what? So Ryan could put his stamp on things? So he could report efficiencies to his father-in-law? My phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. Looking forward to our meeting tomorrow. Corner table at Emerson's, 8 a.m. Diane? Diane Reynolds, former CFO of Westfield Hotels, and now an angel investor looking for new ventures to fund. We'd worked together during the Westfield rebranding campaign, and she'd been impressed enough to keep in touch occasionally. When I'd reached out last week with a carefully worded email about exploring new opportunities, she'd responded within hours. I tucked my phone away, a strange calm settling over me. Tomorrow's meeting could change everything, or it could be just another dead end in a professional path that seemed increasingly blocked. Either way, I was done watching from the sidelines as Ryan destroyed what I'd built. The time for patience and strategic observation was coming to an end. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings I wasn't invited to, decisions made without my input, and tension so thick in the creative department that it felt hard to breathe. By 6 o'clock, the new team assignments had been distributed as promised. The carefully balanced groups I'd created, mixing different personalities, skills, and experience levels to maximize creativity and minimize conflict, had been replaced by arbitrary divisions that made no creative sense. Introverted conceptual thinkers paired with aggressive account managers, junior designers heading teams of senior copywriters. It was as if Ryan had deliberately designed the structure to fail. I was assigned to oversee the least desirable accounts, the small local businesses with minimal budgets and little room for creative expression. The message was clear. I was being sidelined, pushed to the margins until I became frustrated enough to leave on my own, saving them the messiness of a termination. As I packed up my things to leave, a knock at my door made me look up. Zoe stood there, her usually bright expression dulled by the day's events. "Got a minute?" she asked, fidgeting with the beaded bracelet she always wore. "Of course," I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. "What's up?" Zoe sat, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "I got assigned to the corporate team, working directly under Ryan on the financial clients." Her voice cracked slightly on Ryan's name. "I'm a lifestyle brand specialist, Sarah. I don't know anything about financial services communication." "I know," I said softly. "It doesn't make any sense." "None of it makes sense." Her frustration bubbled over. "Travis is heading a team of senior designers when he's barely been here a year. Jessica's been moved off all client work to internal process documentation, whatever that means." It's like he deliberately put everyone in positions where they'll fail. The realization hit me. That was exactly what Ryan was doing. Setting everyone up to fail so he could justify bringing in his own people who would be loyal to him, rather than to me or to the creative vision I'd established. It was a purge disguised as a reorganization. I have an interview at Claxon tomorrow, Zoe continued, naming another local agency. But I don't want to leave. Everything I've learned about branding, about finding the emotional core of a product, I learned it from you, from this team. I don't want to start over somewhere else. Her loyalty touched me, even as it complicated the calculations running through my mind. How many would follow if I left? How many would I want to bring along? How quickly could I establish something new, something better? Don't make any decisions yet, I advised her. Give it a few days. Sometimes these situations evolve in unexpected ways. Zoe studied my face, perhaps sensing the deliberate vagueness in my response. You're planning something, aren't you? I smiled non-committally. Let's just say I'm exploring all available options. And Zoe, keep that interview at Claxon. Always good to know your market value, regardless of what happens here. After Zoe left, I finished gathering my things, including the small potted succulent that had somehow survived years on my windowsill, despite my inconsistent care. As I walked through the creative department, I noted the empty desks, people leaving earlier than usual, perhaps to update resumes or schedule interviews of their own, and the somber mood that had replaced the energetic buzz that once characterized our workspace. The elevator ride to the lobby felt like a descent into uncertainty. Tomorrow's meeting with Diane could be the beginning of something new, or just another disappointment in a month already overflowing with them. Either way, I needed to be prepared. Outside, Chicago's early summer evening wrapped around me, warm and alive with possibility. The walk to the L station gave me time to organize my thoughts, to rehearse my pitch to Diane, to imagine a future where the betrayal of the past month became the catalyst for something better rather than the end of a career I'd poured myself into. My phone rang as I climbed the steps to the platform. Olivia's name flashed on the screen. Hey, I answered, finding a quiet spot away from the evening commuters. How bad was it today? She asked without preamble, our friendship long past the need for social niceties. On a scale of 1 to I'm updating my resume on company time, about a 9. Olivia snorted. That bad, huh? Want me to pick up something stronger than wine on my way home? Maybe, I admitted. But first I need to prepare for my meeting with Diane tomorrow. Everything could change, Liv. Everything. The investor? She agreed to meet? Olivia's voice rose with excitement. Sarah, that's huge! I felt a smile forming, the first genuine one in hours. It might be nothing, just an exploratory conversation. Bullshit. Diane Reynolds doesn't take exploratory meetings at 8 a.m. She's interested. Olivia paused, then added, You know what this means, right? You need to be ready to actually do this. Not just talk about it or plan for it someday, but to take the leap now. The train arrived, doors sliding open with a mechanical hiss. I stepped aboard, finding a seat by the window as the car filled with tired commuters heading home. I know, I said quietly. It's terrifying. Of course it is, Olivia replied. You'd be insane if you weren't scared. But Sarah, think about it. What's scarier? Starting something new that might fail or staying someplace that's already failing you? Her words settled over me as the train pulled away from the station, the city sliding by outside the window in a blur of lights and movement. What was I more afraid of? The risk of failure on my own terms, or the certainty of watching everything? I valued being dismantled by someone who didn't understand or appreciate it. I'll pick up that stronger than wine something, Olivia said when I didn't immediately respond. Sounds like we have some serious planning to do tonight. Thanks, Liv. I ended the call and leaned my head against the cool glass of the train, Window, watching Chicago transform from the corporate downtown to the more eclectic neighborhoods as we headed west. 6 years at Horizon, building something I believed in. 6 years of sacrifices and second jobs and creative solutions, all to reach a position that had been handed to someone else on a silver platter of nepotism. Maybe it was time to build something new, something that couldn't be taken away, something that was completely, irrevocably mine. The train lurched around a corner and I straightened in my seat, a new resolve forming. Tomorrow's meeting wasn't just about exploring options anymore. It was about creating them. And if Diane wasn't interested in funding my vision, I'd find someone who was. The days of waiting for recognition, of hoping for fairness in a system designed to protect insiders, were over. Ryan might have taken my position, but in doing so, he'd inadvertently pushed me toward the one thing I'd been too comfortable, too secure, too afraid to pursue on my own. Freedom. The freedom to create on my own terms, to build a culture that truly valued creativity and merit, to lead without the constraints of corporate politics and nepotism. As the train approached my stop, I gathered my belongings and stood, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Tonight, I would prepare the most important pitch of my career. Tomorrow, I would take the first step toward a future entirely of my own making. And Ryan, with his Harvard MBA and his family connections, would never see it coming. Emerson's cafe bustled with morning energy, the clinking of ceramic mugs, the hiss of espresso machines, the murmured conversations of Chicago professionals starting their day. I arrived 20 minutes early, selecting a corner table that offered both privacy and a view of the entrance. My portfolio sat beside me, along with a tablet loaded with my business plan, projections, and sample client roster. I'd been up until 2 a.m. refining every detail, fueled by Olivia's encouragement and the expensive bourbon she'd brought home. My hands weren't entirely steady as I arranged my materials. This meeting represented more than a potential investment. Opportunity. It was the first concrete step toward leaving the safety net of corporate employment, even if that net had developed gaping holes in recent weeks. Starting my own agency had always been a distant dream, something I'd pursue someday, when the conditions were perfect. But perfect conditions rarely arrived unprompted. Sometimes you had to create them yourself. The cafe door opened, and Diane Reynolds entered, exactly on time. At 53, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing left to prove to anyone. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her attire elegant but understated. Linen pants and a silk blouse that probably cost more than my monthly rent. No power suit, no obvious status symbols. She didn't need them. She spotted me immediately, offering a brief smile as she approached. "Sarah," she greeted, extending her hand. "You look well, despite what I hear is happening at Horizon." News traveled fast in our industry. I shook her hand, gesturing for her to take a seat. "Thank you for meeting with me on such short notice." Diane settled into the chair across from me, declining my offer to get her coffee with a wave of her hand. "I ordered ahead on their app. Should be ready momentarily." She studied me with the direct gaze that had made her notorious in corporate boardrooms. "Your email was intriguing but deliberately vague. You mentioned exploring new opportunities but didn't specify what those might be." "I wanted to discuss that in person," I explained, sliding a slim folder across the table. "I'm planning to launch my own creative agency." She raised an eyebrow, accepting the folder but not opening it immediately. "Ambitious, especially in this market." "The market is precisely why the timing is right," I countered. Major clients are increasingly frustrated with the corporate structure of traditional agencies. They want direct access to creative talent without layers of account managers filtering the communication. They want innovation without the price tag of a global agency. Most importantly, they want results their competitors can't match. A barista approached with Diane's order, A simple Americano, no sugar, no cream. She thanked him without taking her eyes off me. And you believe you can provide that? I know I can. I opened my portfolio to the Westfield Hotels campaign, the one that had won 3 industry awards last year. You saw firsthand what my team could accomplish with Westfield. I did, Diane acknowledged, taking a sip of her coffee. But that was with Horizon's resources behind you, their client list, their infrastructure, their financial backing. Their limitations, their bureaucracy, their risk aversion, I countered. Do you know that the most innovative elements of the Westfield campaign, the ones that ultimately led to a 23% increase in bookings, were initially rejected by Horizon management? I funded those concepts myself through freelance work because I believed in them. Diane's expression shifted slightly, interest replacing polite skepticism. You funded agency work out of your own pocket? I did what was necessary to deliver excellence, I replied. Imagine what I could accomplish with proper backing and full creative control. She finally opened the folder, scanning the executive summary of my business plan with the practiced efficiency of someone who had evaluated countless proposals. You're planning to start with a lean operation. 5 key personnel, virtual infrastructure, minimal overhead. I nodded. The traditional agency model is bloated. Expensive offices in prime locations, excessive management layers, outdated workflows. All of it gets passed on to clients in higher fees without delivering better results. My model focuses on what actually matters: exceptional creative talent, working directly with clients to solve their specific challenges. Diane turned to the financial projections, studying them in silence for several moments. These revenue projections seem ambitious for a startup. They account for clients. I already have relationships with who have expressed interest in following me, I explained. Plus the freelance business I've built on the side, which would fold into the new agency. I hesitated, then added, and potentially certain Horizon clients who are currently dissatisfied with recent changes in the creative department. A slight smile tugged at Diane's lips. I've heard about those changes. Your CEO's son-in-law has quite the reputation for disruption, though not necessarily the productive kind. Ryan has implemented what he calls modernizations to our workflow, I said diplomatically, though Diane's knowing look suggested she understood what I wasn't saying. Those changes have created opportunities in the market for a more client-focused approach. Diane set down her coffee cup. Let's cut to the chase, Sarah. You're asking me to invest in a new agency that would directly compete with your current employer, potentially taking their clients and talent. That comes with significant legal and ethical complications. I've already consulted with a lawyer, I countered, prepared for this objection. I have no non-compete clause in my contract. As for clients, I won't solicit them while employed at Horizon, but I'm free to work with them once I've established my own business. And regarding talent, I chose my next words carefully. People leave agencies all the time. Where they go next is their decision. Diane leaned back in her chair, studying me with renewed interest. You've thought this through. Thoroughly, I confirmed. This isn't a rash decision prompted by a denied promotion. It's the acceleration of a plan I've been developing for years. She nodded slowly, turning to the final page of the proposal. You're seeking seed funding of $750,000. For initial operating costs, basic infrastructure, and a 6-month runway to profitability, I confirmed. The projections show break-even by month 7, with the investment fully recouped within 18 months. Diane closed the folder, regarding me thoughtfully. You know, when we worked together on the Westfield campaign, I was impressed by your creative vision. But what impressed me more was your business acumen. Most creative directors understand design but not dollars. You understand both. In today's market, you need both, I replied. Creativity without strategy is just decoration. She smiled at that. A philosophy I share. She tapped her fingers lightly on the closed folder. I have a different proposal for you, Sarah. Instead of $750,000, I'm prepared to offer $1. $2 million. My breath caught. That was significantly more than I'd asked for. Enough to secure premium talent, better equipment, perhaps even a small but strategic office space. That's very generous. It comes with conditions, Diane continued, her expression turning serious. First, I want 30% equity rather than the 20 you're offering. I did a quick mental recalculation. The additional funding more than justified the equity adjustment. That's reasonable. Second, I want to be involved in major, strategic decisions, not day-to-day operations, but quarterly reviews, key hires, major client acquisitions. Your expertise would be invaluable, I agreed. And third, she said, leaning forward slightly, I want you to solve a specific problem for me. This was unexpected. What problem? Westfield Hotels is preparing to launch a new boutique line aimed at younger luxury travelers. They're interviewing agencies next month. A meaningful pause. Including Horizon. Understanding dawned. You want me to compete for that account? Diane smiled. I want you to win that account. The CEO is a personal friend, and frankly, he's been disappointed with Horizon's recent work since you stepped back from direct involvement. If your new agency could deliver a successful pitch, she shrugged. It would be an impressive launch statement. The implications were enormous. Winning a major account like Westfield's new line would instantly establish credibility for my fledgling agency. It would also send a clear message to Horizon and to Ryan about exactly what they had lost. My current contract has a 30-day notice period, I said, mind racing through timelines and possibilities. If I submitted my resignation tomorrow, I could be operational within 6 weeks. That's cutting it close for the Westfield pitch. I believe you work well under pressure, Diane replied with a slight smile. And my understanding is that you might not be the only Horizon talent looking for new opportunities. A head start on recruitment wouldn't hurt. She was giving me permission, encouraging me, even, to begin assembling my team while still at Horizon. It wasn't entirely ethical, but then again, neither was giving my earned promotion to the CEO's son-in-law. When do you need my decision? I asked, though in truth my mind was already made up. Diane glanced at her watch. I have another meeting across town in 40 minutes, so now would be ideal. Her directness was refreshing after weeks of corporate doublespeak and hidden agendas. I extended my hand across the table. I accept your terms, and I appreciate your faith in my vision. Her handshake was firm, decisive. I don't invest based on faith, Sarah. I invest based on data and observable patterns of excellence. You've demonstrated both. She withdrew a business card from her pocket, sliding it across to me. My lawyer will draw up the paperwork. Call this number this. Afternoon to begin the process. As Diane gathered her things to leave, she paused, fixing me with that penetrating gaze once more. One last thing. When you resign, I suggest you do so with absolute professionalism. Take the high road, no matter how tempting it might be to do otherwise. Of course, I assured her. Good. A knowing smile played at her lips. Because success is the best revenge, and I expect you to be very, very successful. After she left, I remained at the table, my coffee gone cold, my mind racing with possibilities that now had concrete funding behind them. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. How did it go? I typed back a simple response. We have liftoff. Walking into Horizon 40 minutes later felt surreal. The same security guard greeted me in the lobby. The same elevator carried me to the 14th floor. The same faces nodded as I passed through the creative department. Everything looked identical, but everything had changed. I had a plan now. More than that, I had funding, a strategic partner, and a path forward that didn't involve watching Ryan dismantle my life's work piece by piece. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of control returning, and with it, a calm determination that replaced the simmering anger I'd been carrying. Jessica intercepted me as I headed toward my office, coffee in hand and an expression of barely contained excitement on her face. "Morning meeting in your office?" she asked, a code we'd developed for conversations we didn't want overheard. I nodded, continuing toward my smaller office without breaking stride. Once inside with the door closed, Jessica could barely contain herself. "The Meridian presentation was a disaster," she said, a hint of vindictive pleasure in her voice. "Ryan completely butchered it. He ignored all the research about their target demographic, presented concepts that violated their brand guidelines, and then argued with their CMO when she tried to redirect him. Under normal circumstances, a failed client presentation would be cause for concern. Today, it felt like cosmic justice. How bad was it?" "They're requesting a meeting with Director Mark tomorrow," Jessica replied. "But that's not all. The Westfield team called this morning asking specifically why you weren't involved in the planning for their new boutique line pitch. They apparently made it clear that your involvement was expected given the success of the previous campaign." This was an unexpected development and perfect timing. Diane must have already reached out to her CEO friend at Westfield, laying the groundwork for what was to come. "What did Ryan say?" "That you were focusing on other priorities within the agency," Jessica said with an eye roll. "Which Westfield apparently didn't accept. They're insisting on a call with you directly." The pieces were falling into place faster than I'd anticipated. I maintained a neutral expression, not wanting to reveal too much, even to Jessica, just yet. "I'll handle the Westfield situation. In the meantime, continue documenting everything. We may need it sooner rather than later." Jessica studied my face, sensing something had changed. "Your meeting this morning. It went well, didn't it?" I allowed myself a small smile. "Let's just say I've been exploring options." She nodded, understanding the deliberate vagueness. "Whatever you're planning, I'm in. Just say when." After Jessica left, I closed my office door and drafted my resignation letter. Clean, professional, devoid of emotion or explanation beyond the standard pursuing other opportunities. I would submit it tomorrow, after the fallout from the Meridian disaster had fully materialized. Timing mattered in situations like this, not for petty satisfaction, but for strategic positioning. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Diane's lawyer, sending the preliminary investment agreement for my review. It was happening. After years of deferring my entrepreneurial ambitions, of pouring my creativity into someone else's vision, I was taking the leap. The timing wasn't perfect, the circumstances weren't ideal, but perhaps they never would have been without this push. The rest of the day passed in a strange state of detached observation. I attended meetings where Ryan presented his latest innovations, nodding at appropriate intervals while mentally calculating which team members I would approach first with offers to join my new venture. I reviewed mediocre creative work that would never have made it past the first round of critique under my leadership, offering mild suggestions rather than the complete overhauls they required. I was already gone in all the ways that mattered. My body might still occupy Horizon's space, but my mind, my creativity, my future had moved elsewhere. At precisely 4:30, my office phone rang. "Sarah Mitchell," I answered automatically. "Sarah, this is Director Mark. Can you come to my office? There's something we need to discuss." The summons was unexpected. Had he somehow learned about my meeting with Diane? About my plans to resign? "Of course," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "I'll be right there." Mark's corner office always reminded me of a movie set, too perfectly arranged to feel genuinely lived in, with awards displayed at calculated angles and a desk too tidy for someone who actually did substantive work. He gestured for me to take a seat across from him, his expression unreadable. "I'll get right to the point," he began, folding his hands on his desk. "The Meridian presentation didn't go well." I nodded, but offered no comment. Let him steer this conversation wherever he intended it to go. "Ryan is—" He paused, seemingly searching for a diplomatic phrase, still adjusting to the role of creative director. There's a learning curve with client presentations, particularly for complex campaigns. The understatement was almost comical. From Jessica's description, the Meridian presentation had been less a learning curve and more a complete derailment. Still, I maintained my professional facade. "I understand. We all face adjustment periods in new roles." Mark studied me, perhaps searching for signs of resentment or satisfaction. Finding none in my carefully neutral expression, he continued, "Meridian has requested that you take the lead on revising the presentation. They specifically asked for you by name." Of course they had. The same clients who had been impressed by my original pitch now wanted the person whose vision had won them over in the first place. "I'm happy to help however I can," I replied, the corporate platitude falling easily from my lips despite the irony of the situation. "Good." Mark nodded, seemingly relieved by my cooperative response. "There's something else. Westfield Hotels is insisting on your involvement in the boutique line pitch. They've made it clear that your participation is a condition of Horizon being considered for the account." Again, I maintained my composure while internally thanking Diane for her swift behind-the-scenes work. "I'm familiar with the Westfield team and their expectations," I said. "I'd be glad to participate in the pitch process." Mark leaned forward slightly. "This puts us in something of an awkward position regarding the current department structure." Translation: Ryan was supposed to be leading these accounts, but clients were demanding me instead, creating an organizational problem of their own making. I waited, curious to see how they planned to restructure the narrative. "We're considering a temporary co-leadership arrangement for the creative department," Mark continued. "You and Ryan would share responsibilities, with you focusing primarily on client relations and creative direction, while Ryan handles the operational and strategic elements." The proposal was both insulting and revealing. They weren't offering to correct their mistake or acknowledge that Ryan was underqualified for the role. Instead, they wanted me to do the substantive work while he maintained the title, salary, and authority. A behind-the-scenes demotion for him, disguised as a collaborative structure. "That's an interesting solution," I said carefully. "May I ask if this arrangement would come with any adjustment to my current compensation or title?" Mark shifted uncomfortably. "We could discuss a project bonus structure for major accounts like Westfield. As for title, perhaps something like senior creative partner would reflect the collaborative nature of the arrangement." The audacity was breathtaking. They wanted to exploit my client relationships and creative abilities without restoring my rightful position or compensating me appropriately. Under different circumstances, if I didn't already have funding secured, if I hadn't already decided to resign, this might have been another crushing disappointment. Instead, it felt like the final confirmation that I was making the right decision. "I appreciate the offer," I said, rising from my chair. "Would it be possible for me to consider it overnight and give you my response tomorrow morning?" Mark seemed relieved by my reasonable reaction. "Of course. Take the evening to think it over. We can meet at 9 a.m. to finalize the details." I nodded and left his office, maintaining my professional composure until I was safely in the elevator, doors closed, heading down to the lobby. Only then did I allow myself a small, satisfied smile. They had handed me the perfect exit scenario, one where clients were explicitly requesting my involvement, where Horizon was scrambling to accommodate those requests without actually rectifying their original mistake. Outside, the early summer evening was warm and filled with possibility. I pulled out my phone and texted Jessica. Critical update. Coffee before work tomorrow? Intelligentsia, 7:30. Her response came immediately. I'll be there. Next, I messaged Olivia. Operation Phoenix is officially launched. We'll explain everything tonight. As I walked toward the L station, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The betrayal that had initially seemed like the end of my career had instead become the catalyst for something new, something that might never have materialized if I'd received the promotion I thought I wanted. Sometimes the greatest opportunities arrive disguised as disappointments. Ryan taking my position had forced me out of complacency, pushed me toward the entrepreneurial leap I'd been putting off for years. And tomorrow, when I declined Mark's insulting co-leadership offer and submitted my resignation instead, I would silently thank Ryan for the push. My phone buzzed again, an email from Diane's lawyer confirming our meeting tomorrow afternoon to finalize the investment details. Everything was aligning with a synchronicity that felt almost orchestrated. The train arrived, doors opening with that familiar mechanical hiss, and I stepped aboard with a clear vision of what came next. The creative team I would build, the clients we would serve, the agency culture we would create, free from politics and nepotism, focused entirely on creative excellence and results. An agency where talent and dedication would be recognized and rewarded, where no one would need to work 2 jobs to fund the projects they believed in, where hierarchy would be based on ability rather than connections. As the train pulled away from the station, carrying me toward home and the future I was now actively creating, I realized something profound. I wasn't just leaving Horizon. I was leaving behind a version of myself that had accepted limitations imposed by others. The Sarah Mitchell who would walk into Horizon tomorrow to decline Mark's offer and submit her resignation was fundamentally different from the one who had walked out tonight. She was no longer waiting for recognition or validation from people who couldn't see her value. She was no longer fighting to preserve something within a system determined to change it. She was creating something new, something entirely her own. And in that creation lay a form of justice more satisfying than any corporate promotion could ever provide. Are you absolutely certain about this? Jessica asked, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. We sat at a corner table in Intelligentsia, the morning bustle of commuters creating a bubble of privacy around our conversation. Through the window, Chicago's financial district was coming alive, pedestrians hurrying past with purposeful strides and determined expressions. I slid the folder across the table to her, a copy of the business plan I'd presented to Diane, now with additional notes on the funding agreement, timeline, and critical first steps. More certain than I've been about anything in my professional life. Jessica opened the folder, eyes widening as she scanned the details. 1.2 million in seed funding? She looked up, expression shifting from surprise to something approaching awe. Sarah, this is real. This is happening. It is, I confirmed, and I want you to be my first hire. Creative director, with equity stake and profit sharing from day one. Her coffee sat forgotten as she processed my offer. Creative director? But that would be the position you should have had at Horizon years ago, I finished for her. The position that would recognize your talent, vision, and dedication. No corporate politics, no nepotism, no artificial ceilings. Jessica's eyes misted slightly. When would you need me to start? Officially? After you've given proper notice at Horizon? Unofficially? I smiled. The planning starts today. She closed the folder, decision already clear in her expression. I'm in. All in. From there, our conversation shifted to logistics. Who else we might bring over, which clients would likely follow, what our competitive positioning would be. Jessica's strategic mind had always complemented my creative thinking. Even now, she was identifying angles I hadn't fully considered, potential pitfalls I needed to address. This was exactly why she would be an invaluable partner in the new venture. The Westfield pitch is ambitious, she noted, checking the timeline. 6 weeks from zero to competing against established agencies for a major account. That's why we need to move quickly, I agreed. The funding gives us a runway, but landing Westfield would be transformative for the launch. Jessica nodded thoughtfully. Miguel will come back in a heartbeat if you offer him art director, and Travis would follow Miguel anywhere. What? About Zoe? I asked. She's interviewing elsewhere. She'd cancel those interviews in a second for the right opportunity with you, Jessica said with certainty. The team has been fragmenting since Ryan took over, but not because they wanted to leave. They just didn't want to stay under his leadership. We spent another 30 minutes mapping out potential team structures, client approaches, and immediate action items. By the time we headed toward the Horizon offices, we weren't just two dissatisfied employees planning an exit. We were founding members of a new creative agency with a clear vision and concrete funding. The morning at Horizon had a surreal quality, as if I were observing everything from a slight distance. The frustrations that had weighed so heavily in recent weeks, Ryan's poor decisions, the creative team's diminishing morale, the corporate politics, now seemed almost irrelevant. I was already gone in every way that mattered. All that remained was the formality of making it official. At 8:55, I gathered my resignation letter and made my way to Director Mark's office for our scheduled 9 a.m. meeting. He was already waiting, a folder of his own open on the desk, likely containing the details of the co-leadership arrangement he'd proposed yesterday. "Sarah, good morning," he greeted, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "I trust you've had time to consider our discussion from yesterday?" I settled into the seat, maintaining a pleasant professional expression. "I have, and I appreciate the consideration. Before we continue, though, I'd like to share something with you." I placed my resignation letter on the desk between us. "I'm submitting my formal resignation, effective 30 days from today." Mark stared at the letter, momentarily speechless. Whatever he had expected from this meeting, it clearly wasn't this. I'm sorry to hear that," he managed finally. "May I ask where you're going?" "I'm launching my own creative agency," I replied simply. His expression shifted from surprise to something more calculating. "I see. And you've secured funding for this venture?" "I have. No point in hiding information that would become public knowledge soon enough." Mark leaned back in his chair, studying me with newfound wariness. "You understand that your contract includes provisions regarding client solicitation and competitive activities?" "I do," I confirmed calmly. "And I've reviewed those provisions with legal counsel. I have no intention of soliciting Horizon clients while employed here. What clients choose to do after I've established my new agency is, of course, their decision." A flicker of concern crossed his face. He was smart enough to recognize the implications that certain clients might indeed follow me once I departed. "And your team? I assume you'll be looking to recruit from Horizon's talent pool?" "I'll be building a team of exceptional creative professionals," I said diplomatically. "But again, I understand the ethical and legal boundaries. I won't be extending formal offers to any Horizon employees until after my departure." What I didn't say, what we both knew, was that word would spread quickly. By lunchtime, most of the creative department would know I was leaving to start my own agency. The most talented among them would connect the dots and approach me, not the other way around. Mark sighed, resigned to the inevitable. The timing is challenging. With the Westfield pitch approaching and the Meridian situation requiring immediate attention, I intend to fulfill all my responsibilities during the notice period, I assured him, including addressing the Meridian concerns and participating in the Westfield preparations as requested. He nodded slowly, perhaps realizing this was the best outcome he could hope for under the circumstances. "I'll need to inform the executive team, of course, and Ryan." "Of course?" I maintained my professional composure, though I couldn't help wondering how Ryan would receive the news. Would he recognize the implications for his own position once key clients and team members began departing? Would he realize that his unearned promotion had ultimately accelerated the creation of a new competitor? Mark picked up my resignation letter, glancing over the formal language. "I'll have HR prepare the necessary paperwork." He hesitated, then added, "For what it's worth, Sarah, I always valued your contributions to Horizon. The decision regarding the creative director position was complicated. Complicated. Such a convenient corporate euphemism for, we chose family connections over merit." I simply nodded, unwilling to give him the absolution he seemed to be seeking. Some bridges didn't need to be burned, but they didn't need to be reinforced either. As I stood to leave, Mark asked one final question. "What will you call it? Your agency?" I smiled, genuine for the first time in our conversation. Phoenix Creative. The symbolism wasn't subtle, but it felt right. A new creative force rising from the ashes of professional disappointment. Mark's slight wince told me the message had been received. Returning to my office, I found Jessica waiting, barely containing her curiosity. "Well?" she prompted as soon as I closed the door. "It's done," I confirmed. 30-day notice period starts today. She exhaled, a mixture of relief and excitement in her expression. "So we have 30 days to set everything in motion." "Less, ideally. I'm meeting with Diane's lawyer this afternoon to finalize the funding agreement. Once that's completed, we can start securing office space, setting up the business infrastructure, and preparing for recruitment conversations, which we'll need to conduct off-site, of course." Jessica nodded, understanding the need for discretion. "I'll prepare my resignation letter today, but hold off on submitting it until we've had a chance to approach the key team members." "Perfect. And remember, we don't solicit them directly. We just make sure they know about the opportunity." Our planning session was interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Zoe stood there, expression hesitant. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation in the creative pit. Ryan's called an emergency department meeting." Jessica and I exchanged glances. News traveled fast in agencies, but this seemed premature even by industry standards. "Did he say what it's about?" I asked. Zoe shook her head. "Just that it's mandatory for all creative staff. 5 minutes in the main conference room." After she left, Jessica raised an eyebrow. "Think Mark told him already?" "Possibly," I acknowledged. "Or perhaps it's about the Meridian fallout. Either way, we maintain professionalism, no matter what happens in there." The atmosphere in the conference room was tense when we arrived. The entire creative team had gathered, expressions ranging from confused to anxious to resigned. Ryan stood at the head of the table, his posture rigid, his typical casual confidence notably absent. Director Mark sat nearby, his expression carefully neutral. As the last few team members filtered in, Ryan cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. I've just been informed of some developments that will impact the department, and I wanted to address them directly." He glanced at me briefly before continuing. "Sarah Mitchell has submitted her resignation this morning. She'll be serving a 30-day notice period, after which she plans to launch her own creative agency." A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Some expressions registered shock, others knowing looks. Clearly, some had already suspected such a move was coming. I maintained my composed professional expression, meeting Ryan's gaze steadily when he looked my way again. "During this transition period," Ryan continued, "Sarah will continue working on the Meridian account and assisting with the Westfield pitch. I expect everyone to maintain focus on delivering excellent work for our clients regardless of these developments." His words were appropriate, professional, but his tone carried an undercurrent of defensiveness, perhaps even anxiety. This wasn't how he had planned to establish his authority. Having the previous creative director leave to start a competing agency just weeks after he took over was hardly a vote of confidence in his leadership. "Are there any questions?" Ryan asked, looking around the room. Travis raised his hand. Will Sarah's departure affect the new department structure you announced last week? A loaded question that really meant, would the team be freed from the dysfunctional reorganization Ryan had implemented? Ryan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. We'll be evaluating all aspects of the department structure on an ongoing basis to ensure optimal functionality. A corporate speak for I don't know yet. Another hand went up, Miguel, who had returned for a client meeting despite having already resigned. Will Horizon be competing against Sarah's new agency for the Westfield boutique line account? Ryan looked momentarily taken aback, perhaps unaware that the Westfield situation had become common knowledge. Director Mark smoothly intervened. Horizon has a long-standing relationship with Westfield Hotels. We're confident that relationship will continue to thrive based on the excellent work this team has consistently delivered. Non-answer skillfully. Delivered. I remained silent throughout this exchange, observing the shifting dynamics in the room. Every question, every uncertain response from Ryan, every careful diplomatic statement from Mark was further cementing the narrative. Change was coming, and it extended far beyond my individual departure. As the meeting concluded, team members filed out with subdued conversations. Several glanced my way with meaningful looks, unspoken questions about future opportunities, perhaps, or simple acknowledgement of the shifting professional landscape. I nodded politely to each, but maintained my professional distance. The right conversations would happen, but not here, not now. Jessica lingered behind with me as the room emptied. Well, that was enlightening, she murmured. Indeed, I agreed. Especially the body language. Did you notice how the executive team positioned themselves? Mark and the others all slightly separated from Ryan, already creating distance. She nodded. They're preparing the narrative. If things go badly after, you leave. They want to make sure Ryan bears the full responsibility. Corporate politics at its finest, I observed. Meanwhile, we have actual work to do. I have that Meridian revision to complete, and you have the Westfield research to compile. We both understood the importance of maintaining exemplary performance during these final weeks, not just for professional pride, but for strategic positioning. Every success we delivered now would become part of our portfolio at Phoenix Creative. Every client relationship we strengthened might translate to future opportunities after our departure. The remainder of the day passed in a blur of productivity. I completely revised the Meridian presentation, stripping away Ryan's misguided additions and restoring the core creative concept that had initially won their enthusiasm. Jessica coordinated with the research team on the Westfield materials, ensuring we had comprehensive insights for the boutique line pitch. We operated with the focused efficiency of professionals who knew exactly what they were working toward, not just current deliverables, but the foundation for something new. At 4:30, I slipped away for my meeting with Diane's lawyer. The funding agreement was straightforward, but thorough. Diane hadn't built her fortune by leaving details unaddressed. By 6 p.m., I had signed the documents, received confirmation of the initial funding transfer, and officially become the founder and CEO of Phoenix Creative. Walking back to the L station afterwards, I felt a profound sense of clarity and purpose. The path that had seemed so tragically derailed just weeks ago when Ryan received my promotion had actually led me to exactly where I needed to be. Not fighting for recognition within a system that would never truly value creativity over connections, but creating my own system based on the principles I believed in. The next 4 weeks unfolded with the strange dual reality of someone with one foot in two worlds. By day, I fulfilled my responsibilities at Horizon with consummate professionalism, delivering the revised Meridian presentation, which the client enthusiastically approved, contributing to the Westfield pitch development, transitioning my GOE accounts to other team members. By night and weekend, I built Phoenix Creative from the ground up. Diane proved to be more than just a financial backer. Her network and strategic guidance were invaluable, as I secured a lease on a loft space in the West Loop, established the legal and financial infrastructure, and refined our service offerings and positioning. Jessica submitted her resignation 2 days after mine, timing it so her departure would coincide with my own. Zoe followed a week later, then Travis, then 4 other key team members. Each resignation was handled with professional courtesy. None explicitly mentioned following me to Phoenix. Yet Ryan's face grew increasingly drawn with each departure announcement, the reality of the situation becoming impossible to ignore. The most satisfying moment came midway through my notice period, when Meridian Coffee's CMO called me directly, rather than going through Horizon's channels. "I understand you're leaving to start your own agency," she said without preamble. "That's correct," I confirmed. "My last day at Horizon will be 3 weeks from now." "And when will Phoenix Creative be operational?" The fact that she knew the agency's name without me mentioning it spoke volumes about how word was spreading through client circles. "Immediately following, though we'll be scaling up our team and capabilities through the first quarter." "Good," she replied decisively. "You'll be receiving an RFP from us the day after your Horizon contract ends. We want Phoenix to pitch for our complete brand refresh." It was exactly the type of opportunity we needed. A substantial project from a recognized brand, signaling to the market that Phoenix Creative was a legitimate contender despite being newly established. "We would be honored to participate in the pitch process," I responded, maintaining my professional tone despite the surge of vindication I felt. "It won't be a pitch," she corrected. "The RFP is a formality for our procurement department. The account is yours if you want it. Your work on the recent revision made it clear where the real creative vision was coming from all along." By the final week of my notice period, Phoenix Creative had secured office space, established its core team, all former Horizon employees, though none directly solicited while still under contract, and had 3 potential client projects lined up for our first month of operation. The momentum was building exactly as I had hoped, not through underhanded tactics or bridge burning, but through the strength of relationships built on demonstrated excellence. My last day at Horizon arrived with surprisingly little fanfare. Most of my allies had already departed. The remaining team members were focused on their own uncertain futures, and the executives seemed primarily concerned with minimizing disruption to client relationships. I completed my exit interview with HR, turned in my keycard and company devices, and packed the few personal items that remained in my office. As I prepared to leave for the final time, Ryan appeared in my doorway. His expression was difficult to read, a mixture of defensiveness, curiosity, and perhaps a hint of realization. "So, this is it," he said, gesturing vaguely at my packed box. "This is it," I confirmed, neither friendly nor hostile, simply acknowledging the reality. He hesitated, clearly struggling with whatever he had come to say. Finally, he asked, "Was this your plan all along? To leave and start your own agency?" The question revealed so much about his perspective. The assumption that my departure was reactive rather than strategic, that it had been motivated primarily by his promotion rather than my own professional evolution. The truth was both simpler and more complex than he could understand. "Starting my own agency was always the eventual goal," I replied honestly. "The timing was accelerated by recent circumstances." Understanding flickered across his face. "Because I got the promotion. Because I realized I'd outgrown what Horizon could offer," I corrected. It wasn't entirely untrue. His unearned advancement had simply made the limitations of the corporate structure impossible to ignore. Ryan nodded slowly. "The Westfield pitch is next week. Their executives keep asking if you'll be involved." There it was, the real reason for this conversation. Concern about a key account that was showing signs of following me out the door. "I've fully transitioned all my notes and insights to the pitch team," I assured him. "The creative direction is solid. The rest is up to you." What I didn't say, what we both knew, was that Phoenix Creative would be pitching for the same account 2 days after Horizon. Diane had arranged it with her CEO friend, creating a direct competitive scenario that would immediately establish whether clients valued Horizon's institutional presence or the creative vision that had now moved to Phoenix. Ryan seemed about to say something else, perhaps to acknowledge the awkwardness of the situation or offer some belated professional courtesy. Instead, he simply nodded and stepped aside, allowing me to exit with my box of belongings. As I walked through the creative department one final time, I felt none of the resentment or bitterness that had characterized those first difficult weeks after Ryan's promotion. Instead, I felt gratitude, not for how I'd been treated, but for how that treatment had catalyzed the next chapter of my professional journey. The following morning, I arrived at Phoenix Creative's office an hour early, enjoying the quiet moment before the team would arrive for our first official day of operation. The space was everything Horizon wasn't: open, flexible, designed for collaboration without unnecessary hierarchy. Natural light streamed through the industrial windows, illuminating the blank canvases of walls waiting to be filled with the work we would create together. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. On my way with coffee and champagne. Celebration before creation. I smiled, looking around at what we had built in just 4 short weeks. The vision that had once seemed distant and abstract was now tangible, real, filled with possibilities that would have remained unexplored if I had received the promotion I thought I wanted. Sometimes the greatest opportunities come disguised as disappointments. Sometimes the path forward requires a painful push away from familiar comfort. And sometimes, just sometimes, the betrayal that feels like an ending is actually the beginning of something far more meaningful than you ever imagined. As I stood in the morning light of Phoenix Creative's first day, I realized that the story that had begun with "they gave my position to the CEO's son-in-law" would eventually be retold with a different emphasis. And that's how I found the courage to build something better. Not a story of victimhood, but of empowerment. Not an account of what was taken, but a celebration of what was created in response. The door opened as Jessica arrived, bearing gifts and excitement for our first day. Behind her came Zoe, then Travis, then the others, all people who had recognized something worth following, worth building, worth believing in. Together, we raised our coffee cups in a toast to Phoenix Creative's future and to the unexpected catalyst that had made it possible. Ryan getting my promotion wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of a better one. 1 year, too. The day after launching Phoenix Creative, I stood on the rooftop terrace of our new office space, watching the Chicago skyline turn golden in the evening light. We'd outgrown our original loft in just 9 months, necessitating this move to a larger space that could accommodate our expanding team and client roster. 27 employees now, 6 major clients. Industry recognition that had come faster than anyone expected. The door opened behind me, and Jessica joined me at the railing, 2 champagne flutes in hand. "Commemorating the anniversary?" she asked, passing me a glass. "Commemorating everything," I replied, accepting the champagne. "It's been quite a year." We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city lights begin to flicker on as dusk deepened. The terrace was being prepared for our anniversary party. String lights hung overhead, tables arranged for the catering that would arrive soon. Our team, our clients, even Diane would be attending to celebrate what we'd built together. "I just got off the phone with Miguel," Jessica said, breaking the silence. Grant and Morris offered him a substantial raise to keep him from joining us. I smiled. "Let me guess, he turned it down. On the spot, said he'd rather build something meaningful with us than chase money elsewhere." Jessica shook her head, slightly impressed by his loyalty. But that's not the interesting part. Apparently, Horizon just lost the Westfield account. All of it, not just the boutique line. This was significant news. We'd won the boutique line pitch against Horizon last year, but the hotel chain's main brand work had remained with our former employer. Until now, apparently. "Ryan?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Jessica nodded. From what Miguel heard, the final presentation was a disaster. Ryan insisted on reworking the entire strategy the night before, overruling the team's recommendations. The client walked out halfway through. I took a sip of champagne considering this information. Once, hearing about Ryan's failure might have brought a sense of vindication, of justice served. Now, it simply felt like a predictable conclusion to a story I was no longer part of. "You know what's strange?" I said, looking out at the city, rather than at Jessica. "I should probably feel satisfied about that. Some kind of poetic justice that the person who took my position ended up demonstrating exactly why he shouldn't have had it. But instead, I just feel grateful." Jessica raised an eyebrow. "Grateful? To Ryan?" "In a way, yes." I turned to face her, the realization crystallizing as I spoke it aloud. If I had gotten that promotion, I'd still be at Horizon right now. I'd be making more money than I was before, but still less than what I'm worth. I'd be fighting the same corporate battles, navigating the same political landscape, compromising my creative vision to fit someone else's idea of what was safe or marketable. I gestured around us, at the thriving agency we'd built from nothing. Instead, I'm here, building exactly what I want, how I want it. Working with people who share the vision, creating work I'm genuinely proud of. And it never would have happened if Ryan hadn't gotten that promotion. Jessica considered this, then raised her glass. "To Ryan, then, the accidental catalyst." I laughed and clinked my glass against hers. To catalysts of all kinds, even the painful ones. As the first guests began arriving for the party, I found myself reflecting on the strange, winding path that had led here. How often in life do we fight against the very detours that are leading us to better destinations? How many times do we perceive as setbacks what are actually redirections toward where we truly belong? The greatest gift Ryan unintentionally gave me wasn't just pushing me toward entrepreneurship, it was forcing me to confront the true source of fulfillment in my work. Not external validation or titles or even compensation, though those things mattered. The true source was autonomy, mastery, and purpose. The freedom to create on my own terms, the opportunity to excel at what I did best, and the chance to build something meaningful and lasting. I greeted Diane as she arrived, impeccably dressed, as always, and bearing a small gift box. "For the anniversary," she explained, handing it to me. Inside was a beautiful phoenix pendant, crafted in gold and ruby. "It's perfect," I said, genuinely touched by the thoughtful gesture. Diane smiled. "You know, when you first pitched me on Phoenix Creative, I was impressed by your business plan, your creative portfolio, your strategic thinking. But what really convinced me to invest wasn't any of that." "What was it then?" I asked, curious. "It was the fire in your eyes," she said simply. "Not anger, though you had every right to be angry. Not revenge, though that would have been understandable too. It was pure, focused determination, the kind that only comes when someone has found their true path and knows it with absolute certainty." As the rooftop filled with the team members who had taken the leap with me, the clients who had trusted our vision, the partners who had supported our growth, I realized Diane was right. What had initially felt like professional betrayal had actually been liberation. What had seemed like an ending had been the necessary beginning. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in disappointment. Sometimes the wrong door closing forces us to find the right one. And sometimes what appears to be our lowest professional moment becomes the foundation for our greatest achievement. The setting sun cast long shadows across the rooftop as I raised my glass to toast the first anniversary of Phoenix Creative. Not just celebrating what we had built, but honoring the unexpected path that had led us here. The journey continues, but now with the wisdom that setbacks often contain hidden opportunities, if we have the courage to pursue them. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.